Hi, good afternoon. My name's Mike Taylor. It's been 11 months since I worked for a publisher.
What's your status?
Clean.
Clean, you're feeling?
I'm clean, I'm feeling good, I'm loving life. So although I work at Digital Science, most of the things I'm going to be talking about this afternoon, and I am going to try and be brief, being very mindful of the time, I'm talking about from a more personal perspective. And what I did for this event was to come up with 3 different things that I wanted to talk about in front of a group of people. So a year ago, when I was between jobs, as people say, I decided I thought I'd like to do a little bit of research and to see if I can identify the world's collection of open access papers. If you look at various blogs, there's maybe 10 million, maybe 20 million, maybe 50 million open access articles. So I decided to start scratching around and seeing what data is out there to justify some of the assertions that are being made about open access. One of the first things I did was to go to the Crossref API, and I found that there are about 3.5 million articles identified in the Crossref database as open access. Many of those are Elsevier. Elsevier happens to do a really good job in supplying metadata. If you look at the directory of open access journals, you can find another couple of million articles. There's not very much of an intersection between the DOAJ articles and Crossref. NIH claimed to have another 6 million open access articles. So you kind of scratch around and you come to a number which is something like 8 million maybe. It's very far short of even 10 million, let alone 20 or 50 million. And this problem that it's difficult to identify something as simple as whether an article is open access or not in any kind of systematic reporting way, led me to get involved in a little project called Project Cupcake. Those of you who are avid scholarly kitchen readers, which is surely everybody, would have read a post by my colleague Phil Jones about Cupcake last Monday, I believe it was. This is a community project that emerged from a series of workshops that Phil and I were involved with at the R2R conference in London earlier in the year. What Cupcake is aiming to do is to create a series of indicators, metrics if you like, about the qualities of a journal. For example, what is its relationship with ORCID? How many ORCIDs has it got? Whether does it publish its open access information? These are interesting pieces of data because they give you an idea of the degree to which you can trust the data that's going through the pipeline. They give information to funders, to people who are doing research evaluation about the quality of the data and the qualities of the journals. And it says something to the researchers about how well the publishers are managing that metadata, whether they're just saying, yeah, sure, whatever, or whether they're making that data available in a way that can be tested and examined and published. Now, when you think about Cupcake, I don't want you to think that it's open journal metrics in the sense of a site score, a SNP, or an SJR. It's really not. We're looking at the mechanical, the logistical metrics, if you like, of journals. It's certainly not a TripAdvisor for journals. My friend Marie McVeigh warned me that if you ask people what they think about journals, they will only ever tell you when they have something bad to say. That we're talking about systematically measured things that we can get out of infrastructure. We're really not thinking about a black or white idea like Beale's list. These are bad journals, these are good journals. This is a much more nuanced view. We want to expose some data, let people make some informed decisions about the kinds of journals they're working with and are funding through APCs and so forth. It's open and it's free. The link down at the bottom there onto the Scholarly Kitchen article will give you another link about how to get involved. I do warn you though that if you do join up, I will be hoping that you take some work with you. My second thinking point as I rattle through these is a question of how do we go around about building trust in research metrics. Metrics are not just numbers that are produced by commercial entities that are just put out there and are neutral values that people can use or not use. We hear from Thibault and other people that metrics are being used to evaluate individual people, researchers, groups, research, funding. These values, these numbers that are being produced, have a utility which is wider than their simple creation. when you have a situation, when you have numbers that are being used in this sense, then my belief is that you have an ethical responsibility to ensure that there is a sense of trust, that you can rely on these numbers as you develop mechanisms for evaluating people. So some of the questions that I'm really interested in are: how are metrics validated? How are they audited, whether they're audited at all, whether the formulations are stable, the degree to which they can be trusted. So a year ago, myself and a few other colleagues wrote a paper which is about building the infrastructure to make scientific metrics more science. We need to have trust. If we are to build a world where we are embedding metrics in decision processes, then we need to have a social contract, we need to have a sense of trust in the numbers so that we can believe in them and build more organizations around them. There are plenty of places where we do have these organizations that exist in the community where we can build trust. So things like Crossref and DataCite and Counter and NISO, these are community-owned organizations that give us a place where we can come together as a common group of people with a common set of interests and build trust. And my belief, and the belief of my co-authors of that article, believe that if we are to see metrics going forward, becoming part of the research establishment, we will need to see some kind of similar common sense of ownership in how metrics are handled and what those values mean. My third and final substantive point is we really need to take the process of developing metrics for the arts and humanities much more seriously. We've heard, and most people know who are involved in bibliometrics, that citation patterns are not equal between disciplines. Things like the arts and humanities are much more slower, they're much more mixed than the typical STEM sciences. But as researchers, it's very often the case that we are drawn to places where the data is available, where the funding is available. So something like clinical science, where we have this multiplicity of document types, sitting in databases which are largely speaking open, we can link these things together, we can do analyses of them. It's much harder to deal with the arts and humanities. I mean, the height of someone who's involved in the arts and humanities, the height of their impact may be when they are reviewed by the New York Times or the Guardian or the London Review of Books. These are places where they will reach hundreds of thousands of people, be heard, be interviewed on radios and so forth, but not necessarily appearing in scholarly journals. Fall into my own trap. So from my point of view, we need to learn to be much more involved in how we track the impact of the arts and humanities. I'm not sure that we value the cultural impact, and it's certainly the case that it's really difficult to find it. There are certainly technologies that exist in terms of identifying topics, identifying speakers in the mass media. We can do this work, but it's complex. To take the example of the person whose book is reviewed in the New York Times, if we're really lucky, it's going to turn up in altmetric feeds if it's got an ISBN and all the rest of it. The question is whether we take that kind of review seriously or not, whether we recognize that that is a form of impact which falls outside the typical STEM areas. One of the things that I get most involved in when I'm thinking about the cultural reference points of metrics is how easy it is to end up in this place where all we think about the STEM subjects, all we think about is Europe and the US, all we're thinking about are things that are written in English. It's very easy to slice away at the world of scholarly impact and end up with, maybe 40-45% of the world. And there are real implications about doing that. I mean, there are implications because the people who are involved in funding will be looking at spreadsheets, they will hit the impact, whatever it is, column, they will hit sort by descending. The things at the top are the things that have the most impact, and the arts and humanities are never going to be at the top. And although we go to some substantial effort to normalize metrics for subject areas, it's usually focused around the citation, it's usually focused around the approaches that we use for STEM subjects. So that is my final point. Some of you have got this beautifully designed flyer sitting on your seat. This project is one of my babies. Aaron and I have been working on this. What we're trying to do is to establish a conference where people who are involved in policy, funding, people who use metrics can come together and have conversations about the appropriate ways of using metrics. I urge you to save the date and come to Baltimore in the fall. Thank you.